Hey guys, so for this video I'm going to be doing a movie review of Elemental. I didn't really have the desire to watch this movie. Even though it's a Pixar movie, and typically I enjoy Pixar movies, but I don't know, maybe it's just my annoyance with Disney that it kind of like made me wary, but you know, I decided to go watch a movie, so I watched Elemental, and I actually did enjoy it, more than I thought it would. Yeah, let's get started with the plot. So there are these two characters, Bernie and Cinder Lumen. They have left their home on Fire Island, and they're going to Element City to start a new life and to raise their daughter. I actually did like the way they designed the world. So Element City is designed for elements, such as waterfalls, the water elements used for transportation. And so you'll see, the building has a waterfall, and then, the water elements will pop up. They have air and earth elements, use ships, because it's, a lot of water around. Air elements use airships, and they themselves are the air, and so, it will, the airship will, dock, I guess you could say, and all the air would come out, and it would deflate, and then all the air elements go in, and it inflates, and so I really thought that was a cool idea. They even had the scene where one of the elements has one of their kids on a leash so he doesn't float away. It was fun. And of course, so I was kind of, because I'm just a realist, and so I was thinking throughout the movie about certain things, like if there are sentient water elements, and then there's unsentient, so just plain water. So how does that work exactly? Is it like life and inorganic matter, and organic matter, is that what it is? Something happened that created sentient life, and then everything else is just inorganic. So it was kind of an interesting thought. And fire is extinguished by water. So they carry around wood to add fuel to the fire. But what is the wood made of? Is it once again unsentient wood? And there are sentient elements, because the ground elements, the earth elements have trees for hair, I guess. And so are they carrying around dead body parts of the earth elements, or is that just inorganic inorganic matter? It was just kind of funny. So anyways, going back to the plot, these lumens, they set up a shop. It's called the Fireplace, and that caters to fire elements, and so we get a lot of different characters. Ember helps, but she's not too good with annoying customers. She always ends up blowing up, which frankly, she's the most relatable character in the movie, having to deal with annoying ass motherfucking customers. She's so relatable. So she has to learn to control her temper so that she can become owner of the shop. So her father leaves her in charge of the shop to see if she can run it. She gets pissed, of course, so she goes down to the basement to blow her top. She ends up bursting open a pipe, and Wade Ripple shows up. He's a water element, and he cries all the time, and kind of sets his arc in the movie. He's really sad, and eventually after meeting Ember, he's more happy, and they do good at changing the characters through the movie to show how they've changed each other. He also happens to be a city inspector, and so he cites her for multiple violations, And so he ends up heading to City Hall to hand the citations to his boss. Her name's Gail Cumulus, an air element, of course. I do like the pun names. And she chases him, but she ends up being too late, and he gets the citation to his boss. Of course, he ends up feeling bad, and so he takes her to Cyclone Stadium. And Gail apparently owns like a team there, and so she's watching them play. Eventually, because one of the players is not doing too good, he's really sad, but Wade ends up cheering him up, and so they end up winning and putting Gail in a good mood, I guess. And so she says that if they are able to find the leak that caused the water pipes to burst, then she'll get rid of the citations. So they start looking for the leak, and they have like moments where they kind of get to know each other, and he ends up talking to Ember about kind of why she gets angry all the time, and he suggests that she's angry because she doesn't want to admit something to herself, but she denies it. So they end up finding the leak, and they plug it up with sandbags. They continue to spend more time together and get closer, but the sandbags end up not working, and so Ember uses her glass-making abilities that we've kind of been established. I believe it was earlier in the movie, or this is the first time we see her do it. I think it's just, it's established earlier that she can do that, but she uses it to melt the sand to create glass to plug the hole. Something else I thought about, she has a fury temper, and so, she has a bad temper, so she continually, gets really hot. So I think that's kind of like how she's able to melt the sand to become glass, and it's also kind of indicating that's kind of what she wants to do. She's very passionate, she's kind of an artist, and so she makes this really stunning art using her frustration. So this was a thought. So Ember ends up going to Wade's house for dinner, when she ends up showing them how she makes glass, because a vase breaks, a water jug I believe it was breaks, and so she uses it to make another water jug that's really fancy. And so Wade's mother, her name's Brooke, is impressed and offers her a glass making internship. So one thing I thought was interesting, the entire their house is water, so the floor is water, and they have rafts floating around, and so she has to stay on the raft so she doesn't essentially die. And so she has to they have the dinner table, but it's also in water, and so she just has to make sure she doesn't fall into the water. So they end up playing the crying game, which is a game where the loser is the first one to cry, and so they try to make each other cry. Wade ends up making Amber cry, despite the fact she's never cried before, by telling her, admitting his feelings for her. So kind of cute moment. And anyways, Gail ends up calling them, and she says that the plug worked, so the store has been saved. She's not going to not getting the citations. And this is when kind of Ember realizes she doesn't end up wanting to take over the store. She wants to be a glassmaker, but of course her father expects her to take over the store. So they end up throwing a kind of a retirement party to pass on the torch, if you will, no pun intended. And yeah, he talks about how when he left Fire Island, he had bowed to his father, which is kind of an important part of their culture. But his father didn't bow back because he did not approve of, Bernie leaving. And so, of course, it's going to set up for, you know what's going to happen next. And so Wade ends up taking Ember to Garden Central Station to see the wisteria flowers. Her family had originally gone there when she was a kid, but they were not allowed to because they were fire elements. And so he ends up taking her down there despite the fact it's underwater. They have Gale like create an air bubble, and he pushes her through the tunnels to see the flowers. And of course they have a close call. She almost dies. But they end up making it out, and then she kind of realizes how, you know, free-spirited and fun Wade is. And so I guess you could say they kind of bring out the best in each other. They end up touching. So they touch, and her fire is like extinguished a little bit, and his hand starts, like, the water in his hand starts boiling, but they don't, like, you know, they're able to touch. But of course she starts having doubts. She feels her responsibility for her family, so she leaves him. She rejects his I guess feeling for her, him wanting to be together. So they end up, like I said before, having a party to pass the torch. And Wade ends up appearing to confess his feelings of love to her, but him being him accidentally reveals that Ember was the one who broke the pipes. And her father gets pissed, and despite the fact that Ember ends up rejecting Wade at that time, her father denies her the, you know, store. So he decides he's not gonna retire now, and he's gonna run the store because he does not believe in her. Kind of, you know, showing how he, despite the fact, claimed that he didn't want what happened to him happened to her. His father rejecting him, he ends up rejecting her. And so, but you haven't figured it out already, the cell ends up breaking, and the water floods the fire districts. And so they end up going, Ember ends up going to the fireplace to try to save the flame that has burned since they, you know, bought the place. And so it's very much, she wants to try to please her parents by saving the blue flame. But she, you know, the place ends up getting flooded. Wade shows up, but they end up getting trapped, and she uses her firepower to melt the metal to kind of seal the water out, but it ends up raising the temperature in the room, and so Wade ends up evaporating. And so they eventually are able to find her, and she has this, like, teary confession that she loves Wade, confesses it to her father, and reveals she doesn't want to own the store. So kind of, even though Wade's gone, she still kind of tells the truth about what she really wants and feels. And of course, it's what I thought it was. She realizes that Wade has gotten into the cracks of the stones, and you can hear him, like, crying. It's like this like omnipotent voice crying, and so she plays the crying game to get him to reform. So Wade and Ember ends up leaving Element City to travel the world together, and you know, so she can study glassmaking. But before she leaves, she decides. But before she leaves, she bows to her father, who in return bows. So, you know, they complete that whole, like, arc, I guess. Yeah, I actually really did enjoy this, and so I don't regret watching it. if you want to watch a good kids movie, and that's pretty creative, I would watch this movie. Development of the movie was actually pretty interesting. This was made by the people who made The Good Dinosaur. I have not watched The Good Dinosaur yet. I just think that, I don't know, I just wasn't impressed by the trailers, I guess, but I'll probably eventually watch it. But it was actually inspired by the director's youth. He's the son of immigrants who came to New York City in the 70s. And the movie kind of highlights his experience growing up. So when he was in New York City, they were like, the city had like districts for like different ethnicities, and so of course like Chinatown, Little Italy, but yeah, and so they kind of create that in the movie by having all these elements have different districts. So there's the fire district. The story, like the romantic story, was inspired by films like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Moonstruck, and A Mill. I've not watched any of those movies. I'm not typically into romance movies. The creators studied YouTube videos of Venice and Amsterdam for inspiration for how to build the city. This happened to take place during COVID, and so they weren't actually able to go to the cities, and so they relied on YouTube videos to create the city, which I thought was interesting. So the movie took 7 years to develop, and it's the highest budgeted movie or animated movie of all time. It had a $200 million budget, so about the budget of some of the, the Secret Invasion. It doesn't have a huge budget. So Elemento is noted for being Pixar's first movie to have a non-binary character, which I can't remember which one it was, and a queer character, which I did notice that. Wade's sister, named Lake, has a girlfriend, and they reference it in like one line. So, I mean, it's more representation than I've ever gotten in like MCU movie. So, or better representation than we've gotten in a MCU movie. So when they were making the Element City, they wanted to create a city that would be hostile towards fire elements. And so they decided to have it based on water. And so there's a lot of water around. And I noticed that because like the train, you'll see them like, there's like the overhead train tracks, and then it will go overhead, and then they had like water on tracks, and so it would displace, and there'd be like waterfalls. And so if you're a fire element and you got hit by that, you're pretty much dead. But yeah, they created this city that was based mostly on water. And so their idea was that water was the first element to come to Element City, and so they build like the structures and stuff like that, the architecture. Then the earth comes along and they form the delta, and then it's the air, and then the fire comes along, and they're the ones, the last groups to come to the city, and they're the ones that are treated the worst because they're obviously so destructive unintentionally. So the writing, what I kind of liked about this was how much thought they put into this movie, energy they put into this movie, because David J. Peterson, he's the one who constructed the languages for Game of Thrones and Dune. He created a language for the fire elements. It's called Finnish, and it's based on the fire sounds that are part of Ember's family. And so they talk, Bernie gives them his real name, and it's literally just fire hissing, and it was really cool. But yeah, he goes by Bernie. But I do like how much thought they put into this movie. At the end, they did consider giving Ember and Wade a baby, and it was going to be made of steam, which that's what I was thinking as well, because mix fire and water, you get steam. They ended up not doing it because they wanted a solid ending for the movie, and I didn't like it how they ended it because it was very much more emotional because it was between the father and the daughter. But also, they wanted to have it for possible sequels, which, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. So this animation, like I mentioned, is the most expensive animated movie. Probably because it had it took up the most computer power of all the Pixar movies. So it took over 151,000 cores, and it was contained in 3 large rooms on the Pixar campus. That was more than Monsters Inc. and other Pixar movies. So obviously why it's so expensive. They had to get a lot of upgrades and they had to buy more computers. But yeah, probably not going to get a sequel because it was $200 million budget and only made $394 million. So I'm disappointed because it was a very good, well-made movie. I believe the dickhead at Paramount or whoever put this out used this movie as an example to try to say that we're going to focus more on intellectual property than more original shit, which, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind they just wanted to find an excuse to, put out shitty sequels from now on, so, yeah, it kind of pisses me off. But there was a critic that called it underwhelming and ranked it among the studio's worst releases to date. Yeah. Coming from, a studio that routinely puts out great movies, that's not that bad of a criticism. All these other movies are so good that yours is just mostly good. It's definitely it's better than most of the Disney movies coming out now, so I'll take this any day. But yeah, so that was my thoughts on Elemental. If you do like Pixar, I would go watch this. If you want to find you want a kids movie to watch it. It's really fun and creative. That's why, I enjoy watching it. I love seeing people's creativity. So that was my movie review of Elemental. So if you did like this video, give it a like, subscribe to get notifications for all the videos I'll be doing. You guys have a nice night. Stay safe out there. I'll talk to you later.